So, in Buddhism, the good news, the good news is basically we can transform, transcend, and it's not for just for temporarily, but ultimately we can become Buddha and enlightened. So, of course, that is really good news. But the question comes how and when. And so, how, and that the teaching of wisdom and teaching of compassion, these are the fundamental, and compassion is very natural in our human behavior, kind of natural. It is limited, but in deep down, can we say it's natural a little bit? But it goes through the difficulty period. But once our human parts come back, so you don't have to go to compassion graduation or compassion study. This is something our human that naturally respond. The wisdom, which is not natural, we can respond. We need to kind of overcome. So there's a kind of two. One is a kind of nature, human kind of. Once we are not distracted with the destructive emotion, once we're human part, even though we can say like so heinous person, when we see the human part, there's a human part, which is a kind of the more deeper nature of that individual, then we see something different. So compassion element, it has space to grow, but is there some kind of fundamental, somehow there's some kind of innate or natural. And the wisdom part, which where we're struggling, that's the Buddha's teaching, where is the Prajnaparamita Sutra, the Heart Sutra. Sometimes I feel like we should have a different color-coded Heart Sutra. Heart Sutra, this one for depression, Heart Sutra, this one for when you are angry, this Heart Sutra when you're really excited, this Heart Sutra when your concentration is so perfect. Now you have to do one Heart Sutra also. So right now the Heart Sutra looks like it's so pervasive, so general, and somehow we need to kind of translate our own Heart Sutra, whatever challenge that we are facing, and somehow to recite that Heart Sutra, not as a saying is so blessed sutra, but Heart Sutra that communicates with the mind problem and now in this moment. So somehow we need to come out taking same format, and then whatever it said, there's nothing there. Whatever it's saying, there's nothing there. Maybe you should fight with the Heart Sutra. Maybe you are annoyed with the Heart Sutra, and you become what you mean that. So I think it's good we have to have a Heart Sutra, same format, but instead of taking all the general topic, bringing into our own day-to-day life, and insert, and then let's see. It's really kind of annoys you, or it's you. what is going to happen? So I think we need to figure out. I think it will be really good. Otherwise, if there's some kind of become distance, what's happening in the grassroots, and there's a kind of general. Of course, when the Buddha's teaching, as a teaching, you cannot go as a very specific because you need to cover for universal. But I think it's important some way to finding into those sutras, like Heart Sutra or Vajrakatra Sutras. And then, like it can be. But what is I feel very important study of wisdom in Buddha's teaching, Nagarjuna's teaching. I think if we we just follow, Nagarjuna is right. So we just kind of like, he's not mistake, so we just kind of naturally following and trying to kind of fit with his own idea. I'm not sure we'll get good understanding of the Shunya, teaching of Prajnaparamita Sutra. We have to rebel. I think if we look into, because rebel is not just as a naturally, but karmically we must be rebelled because our experience doesn't show that, whatever Prajnaparamita Sutra is teaching. So it should be something that, so that's I think the deepest way of understanding. If not trying to understand what Nagarjuna is saying, but we have to have lots of questions that comes through our own experience, not through experience of study and learning, experience of our own karma, what's going on in our life, and then challenging the suggestion was given through Prajnaparamita Sutra and Heart Sutra, Nagarjuna's things. So then I think we can get much more deeper understanding of and so not trying to fit with Nagarjuna's view of the world, not trying to fit with we need to kind of the wisdom teaching is so much questioning our own karmic experience. Wisdom teaching is challenging our day-to-day life experience. In some case, sometimes when we misread wisdom teaching, it's almost telling, ignore, discredit, it's not real, it's like illusion. It's almost like like if we not read entire, then it almost telling like, hey, it's not real, not validating, it's not recognizing, it's not acknowledging. And our experience, karmic experience, are vivid and real. And then somebody comes and tells it is like an illusion. So concept of an illusion we need to see with the context. Concept of a non-intrinsicness we need to see with the context. Otherwise, so before trying to see with the context, I think we need to bring our own karmic context and then trying to question. That's, I think, really good ground of a research. In a research for wisdom, our karmic experience have to be there. If we don't bring our own karmic experience, what's happening in our day-to-day life, the experience, the vividness, and then just trying to understand the book of Nagarjuna or Buddha, then we are kind of trying to go in somebody's shoes. And then, end of the day, we need to come back into our own shoes, so then again, that shoes will be very painful. And then becomes the ideal kind of nirvana, ideal, but doesn't become practical. So therefore, I think meditator into in the shunya, in the wisdom, I think from the beginning, if we try to dissolve intrinsicness, this kind of like a premeditated, ready-made kind of like that kind of approach will not sink into reality where we are. So therefore, it is a very important what we are going through is we need to bring. And not trying to dissolve, not trying to discredit it, but comparating with the Nagarjuna's view. And that's has eruption. That's eruption with our own experience in the teaching of Nagarjuna is the ground where we meditate. That's the actual meditation. Meditation is not trying to fit into a Nagarjuna's view of the world. Okay? So in that exercising, that dance, that observation, that egoless observation, ego observation will becomes I am right and Nagarjuna is wrong. But over here we're not trying to do that. We're not trying to concluding and judging in both cases my karmic experience and Nagarjuna's worldview. But here what's happening is a still opening dialogue and going through the process, which really can deepening. I think that's the best way to go, rather than just to try to understand what Nagarjuna is trying to say. Trying to be in the shoes of a Nagarjuna, I think is totally wrong. And sometimes we tend to do that, trying to wear the Nagarjuna's shoes and we live our own karmic shoes. And if Nagarjuna is there, maybe he will scold, leave my shoes, wear your own shoes. Don't take my shoes. Okay, so here the transition, how you come out into the meditation of emptiness is not to ignore the truly existing experience of our karma. Trying to ignore our own truly existing karmic experience and trying to be into the emptiness of intrinsic existence of view of the world with Nagarjuna suggesting, I'm not sure. We are just taking a break. We are not trying to understand and work. So therefore, in the meditation in emptiness, shunya, subhava, fundamental to bringing our own experience of intrinsic existence of self and phenomena. It's a fundamental, because this is the working ground. This is the mass that we have. And it is not trying to discredit our own experience of a phenomena and self as an intrinsic existence, not to ignore. Not already telling you are wrong. How it is our experience of intrinsicness of a self and phenomena is so vivid. Is easily trying to just follow Nagarjuna and saying this, like my experience of initial reality as so the meditation of Nagarjuna, what I feel, Nagarjuna is not necessarily saying this is a right and this is a wrong. Maybe within that experience of a karmic experience of a nature of a reality, Nagarjuna may suggesting there is a way to strike the balance. There is not kind of left or right or this and that, but there is something that way to balance that there is something that okay, so anyway so my meditation in emptiness, Highway 5, South Seattle. Almost drive me crazy, but Barbara drove car very well. So it's also fine. Okay. So So now the fundamentally, the self, the I, the mind, the feeling, the world. Let me say three things. There's the self, the I, which have experienced by the mind, or experienced by the emotion, or whatever you could call, and the subject, the world, the phenomena. So, now here, the meditation, concept of meditation, is meditation is it is a purpose base of a practice, or it's a reality base of a practice. It is a purpose base of a practice. There's some purpose. You do this one, it can help you. It's a purpose base, or it is a reality base, or it can be both. Okay, so like for example, in our daily life, distraction. I think a meditator, we should have an expression that's saying, my mind is driving me crazy. My mind is going through my nerve. We have to have that kind of acknowledgement, experience on a daily basis if we are meditating. If we never thought, my mind is driving me crazy, I'm not sure we are meditating. We are, because meditators need to. It is not duality based. Mind is trying to do something. Really, we are transforming the mind itself. So you're really observing the mind. So here, number one, I think if we feel this kind of feeling more often, my mind is driving me crazy. This mantra. Not the Trump driving me crazy. My mind is driving me crazy. My mind is going through my head. My mind is just bugging me. Like this kind of expression. Like look at the mind. It just tells me different story. It's inconsistent. This is 1,000 lies daily basis, and all the things. How much mind, like. So I think there's some kind of groundwork for meditation. If we just kind of like not did this kind of homework, like looking at how the mind is, and that kind of chaos mind, midst of a chaos mind, then trying to go into the mindfulness and shamatha, I'm not sure we are well prepared. Because we are still following that chaos, So, as a groundwork, as a grassroots work, as a homework, we have to somehow see into day-to-day basis, like mind. Hey, please, mind, leave me alone. Maybe instead of making Buddhas and Bodhisattvas blessing me, maybe it's like make a prayer. Please, my mind, leave me alone. So the mind, it's wild, it's crazy, it is inconsistent. So there is a meditators need to some way, not just like this pain and I'm distracted and this kind of like a surface renunciation, that's not good enough. Fundamentally, behavior of the mind. Behavior change, not regime change. Also this so anyway, behavior change. behavior change of the mind. So first time meditator, we have that kind of that kind of mondo practice. Somehow seeing, recognizing behavior, seeing that behavior. And based on that, I think now the meditator, somehow we went through kind of like the self, the mind, and the phenomena. First, we have to go with the behavior of the mind. We cannot look at how the world is functioning. We cannot look at so much with the self itself, but the corner where we start the meditation is the observation, looking into the behavior of the mind itself. Okay, so that's the kind of like the so now the meditation is not necessarily resisting the mind itself, the behavior of the mind to resist. Now negotiating instead of saying leave me alone, let's have a conversation. Instead of saying maybe meditator is let's have a face-to-face, let's have a heart-to-heart conversation with the mind. This is so maybe the meditation is sometimes we think meditation is to trying to ignore, trying to quiet, silent, and trying to focus on something. It's also good for a short time. It just becomes trick. It doesn't become that homework. Mm-hmm. So therefore, I think maybe before we silence, we should have not Argentinian style of a conversation. There's in Puerto Rico, there's one Argentinian restaurant, and you go inside there, you have to loud shout. Everybody's shouting. One of my friends told me to the Argentinian restaurant. He says all loud and shouting. So I went to read. Everybody says, when you say something, you have to say loud. And it is loud, and that becomes loud, and all the table becomes so loud. So I think, yes, at the fundamental level, motivated by certain extents of a pure renunciation. And preparation for actual meditation having some level of a dialogue or conversation with the mind. And that conversation is not so much blaming each other. Usually when we start conversation, we start the game of blaming. You did that. It's not about the game of blaming. It's really trying to have a understanding and compassionate communication with the mind itself. It's much more kind of like a acknowledging and understanding base of communication is the communication not based on accusing and judging. So that kind of like basically it's really trying to understand the mind, behavior of the mind, and not necessarily judging or reacting. Is a much more kind of basically, it is I say, meditation should be healing base of a practicing rather than kind of like uprooting something. So, it's a healing base of a communication practice. So there is a healing of your sadness, healing of your depression, healing of your anger and hatreds, healing of your own. So for healing, fundamental for this any kind of addiction or affliction, habit, fundamental healing, the moisture, the water, the life is just bringing by the compassion. And what that really means is step number one is a non-judgmental for that habit. Non-judgmental is not just restraining judgmental, it's really laying down everything. It's not just to restrain the judgmental, but it's just kind of totally let go of the judgmental in really being in presence and observing. So it's fundamentally not following the reflections guidelines, but it is basically listening, pay attention, but not as a subject, but really kind of. So anyway, I think if we want to do a really good, kind of like a long-term planning, the Shine meditation or anything, I think there is a lot of kind of non-violent communication have to have with our mind is fundamental. There's no shortcut. There's all this mess we need to discuss, but the time being just shut down. I'll do a 9-day mindfulness meditation in the chapter time being just put in the closet. So that's maybe short temporary, maybe good, but it's have to be communicated. It need to be basically there's some kind of like a tenderness and acknowledgement is the key ingredient to healing. Okay. Distraction comes from because there's something missing. Anger and hatred is coming because there's something missing. Okay. So now the question comes, what is the rule of Nagarjuna's teaching or Prajnaparamita Sutra's teaching of emptiness? Are they comes later on we should deal with it, or they can be important at the beginning? Should we have that world view is to kind of it have to be integrated from the beginning, or it need to come kind of later. So that's kind of like the question. Mainly we can kind of like so I feel if we are serious and kind of like if we're just looking for temporal, maybe not necessarily Nagarjuna's worldview we require, we can do the temporal approach. If we are kind of long-term and serious about the challenge that we face in our daily life, then I think, yes, the Nagarjuna's and the Prajnaparamita Sutra suggestion, I think we have to bring that on the table. Now, now we need to kind of like one way to look at it. Any kind of a challenge, any kind of external challenge, internal challenge, what will be the first step you're going to do it? What will be the first step in any kind of this, any challenge comes up? What will be the first step? Not to control that. Usually we like to control everything. What we strategize will be the first things. The challenge not to get worse, isn't it? That will be the first thing, like whatever situation as you see, not get from bad to worse. That will be like, and when you're looking at the challenge, so that's the kind of the fundamental we're going to. So Nagarjuna's teaching in the emptiness view of reality, or even when you bring concept of true truth, conventional reality and ultimate reality, maybe we can look at into this whole thing is approach of de-escalating of our own karmic experience. So Nagarjuna's the teaching of a shunya, or like this emptiness meditation, or Prajnaparamita Sutra. In the initially, that wisdom is all about de-escalating our own karmic habit. In the long term, of course, we want to solve the fundamental. So now when you say de-escalating, let's see in our own day-to-day life, when there's two friends are arguing, what will be the method to de-escalate? Calm down, slow down. You never say you are right or you're wrong. No one going to de-escalate to explode. It's okay. There's somehow not saying you are right, you are wrong. There is some kind of acknowledgement, but you never say you are right or you are wrong. So the method of a de-escalation is something. It's okay. Let's talk later. Or there is something. It's never judging at all, but trying to kind of not validating or not devalidating. Devalidating, you can say that. Invalidating or validating. You never do that. So here into meditation in Nagarjuna's in a day-to-day life. In the meditation of emptiness, and I think initially it is neither validating or invalidating or validating. Okay. So for me, when we say conventional truth, it is a very politically correct terminology. It's been very soft. It's a conventional reality. There's a conventional and there's a reality. Do you think these two can go together or not? No. This is reality and conventional. What the English word conventional means? Conventional. It's some kind of like surface.
Normal.
Conventional reality.
Or a way that people look at things, like conventions, a way to look at things, people look at things.
It's very conventional.
Customary.
Yeah.
Usual, ordinary.
Agreed upon a way of looking at something.
Yeah.
An agreed upon way a group of people look at something.
Okay, conventional. It is very conventional.
Depending on where
Okay. So anyway, so the teaching of a true truth, conventional truth and ultimate truth, and maybe the question comes, what teaching of a conventional truth will transform our karmic experience, our daily life? So what I feel, the conventional truth is almost like a de-escalating approach, a reality that we experience through our own karmic accumulation. Is a conventional truth. Is
It's like the middle way.
It's not necessarily saying it's the middle way, because the middle way is the ultimate truth. So in a certain way it is validating, because obviously there is the word truth. Okay. In a way, the word it says conventional. It loses certain level of a weight of a truth. So experience in our own daily life is a conventional reality. So basically, the suggestion is, just to It's just kind of like approach of so if we say totally illusion, totally like dream, where's the truth part? You know. So here so when when the teaching of all these in the sutras saying like a dream, like a mirage need to apply, and when we need to apply the, you know, it is like a, it is a this whole wisdom teaching need to be adapt into the reality was individual person going through karmic journey. You know, there's no like, it's like a dream and everything's become so nihilistic. You cannot go through that. So majority in our own karmic experience maybe is much more trying to look into the conventional reality. It's not absolute, it's a conventional reality. Maybe that gives some kind of yield, you know, just to our experience into the samsara, whatever, you know, imprint which is a ripening into our daily life, karmic. It's almost, it has this kind of like a yield sign constantly. Okay, slow down, slow down. You know, like, so anyway, conventional reality is some kind of like, we can say some kind of a yield sign into our, into daily karmic experience. Is not into the meditation cushion session, but in kind of daily. Okay, this is a conventional reality. So, so naturally, our aggression, disappointment, sadness, pain, it's kind of like it already didn't give chance, didn't create that space. Once we see as an absolute, and not only absolute, but the ultimate truth, and then exactly it is a recipe to creating this very painful, intrinsic, permanent. So really, the what you call that when you emit into the hospital, and then first they put you this drain.
IV.
I would say wisdom of a conventional reality is the IV. Somewhere you can keep alive still, go on, so you can have the better the more serious treatment of ultimate truth later on. So you know, so basically. Okay, now maybe the question comes in the meditation, why we have to bring these things, conventional and these things? Because it is not trying to apply some technique, it is trying to get clear communication with what we are going through in our own daily life. So that's the kind of fundamental we need to see. It is not trying to bring some kind of hidden, complex philosophical terminology. Yes, in a way it is like that, but we need to see this is what it's trying to do is basically our habit and what's happening. And I was saying, yeah, this is real. What's happening? It's really, this is, and we feel absolutely real. I cannot ignore. I cannot lay back. I need to be full pay attention. I need to get on top of it 100%. You know, so that's also brings the driven, brings energy, good. but at the same time it brings chaos and confusion. So wisdom of a conventional reality is just kind of yield sign. Yes, it is not trying to discourage that driven energy. Yes, we have to have it. We have to pay attention, be on top of it. Being, pay attention is not an illusion, it's just laid back. No, the same, this is a convention. It's not absolute. If we say absolute, yes, then more benefit than more tragic. The conventional reality, as a conventional reality, yes, it gives us some kind of like a traveling insurance, some kind of insurance, wisdom insurance. Wisdom insurance insured some way to not to fall. Okay, anyway. So and it's interesting, like for example, I watched some documentary on Einstein. It's so amazing. He's an amazing human being. And obviously, his wisdom was to invest not into the conventional, in the surface, went too deep in the atom, and just kind of going much more deeper. And like, it's just naturally, once individual persons look into what is the reality, only option is to go beyond the surface, the conventional. This is just only the way. Okay, so then he discovered, all the concept of the atoms and relativity. I think he didn't get Nobel Peace Prize for his relativity theory. I think he got his Nobel Peace Prize for atoms. Right? So I think he had several theories at that time he come up, but then I saw that is the relativity theory. Anyways. So anyway, the things, the approach is go beyond the conventional, the surface, the matters. In the scientific field, what he went through, and going through much more in the subtle matters. Now, in the Nagarjuna's approach in Prajnaparamita Sutra, in their meditation of wisdom in observation of the nature of reality, is the other side of the coin, going into the subtle observation of a consciousness. Not the matter, but going other side. Here, in the material world, you go to the matter and go to much more in the atoms and cells. So in the meditative, in the wisdom, it is some kind of approach. When you say nature of reality, particularly when it comes to the ultimate reality, go beyond the conventional. And that applies, of course, with the external and internal matters and consciousness in both cases, but it seems like in the Nagarjuna and Prajnaparamita Sutra, the process is applied much more into the mind. So therefore, this kind of like a subtle mind, gross mind. So this observation into So my point over here is you know, when we say reality, in the Nagarjuna, in the Prajnaparamita Sutra, without the mind, if we talk reality, it doesn't make sense in the Nagarjuna's point of view. So mind, and when you say mind, it's so much about the nature of the mind itself. You know, like for example, all phenomena is the nature of a mind. Reality is the nature of a mind. Nature of a mind is not another than reality. Reality is not another than nature of the mind itself. So only options and access that we have is to observing the nature of reality. Nature of reality is through observing nature of the mind. So that is the door and access that we have when we say what is the nature of reality. Is the only way to look into the nature of the mind is the password, the password to the nature of reality. So, so therefore, this meditation into nature of the mind and meditation in the emptiness, when you're looking into these two things, almost like it might have two different, looks like it have its own two different directions. But now, when we're looking into the process, meditation of the emptiness and the meditation of the nature of the mind, in the fundamentally, it is a kind of unbiased way of observing, no intrinsic way to validate reality or emptiness. You know, the nature of a mind is not to, nature of a mind, meditation in nature of a mind is not to validate something. And a meditation of emptiness is not necessarily to validate something. Okay? Because everything comes from nothingness. Okay. Oh, okay, anyway, I'm talking too much. I think it's important you should ask question for me, you know, like... Yes.
So I have a question about when you started, you're talking about, we were talking about how compassion, like we have kind of an innate compassion, and then all this other junk kind of gets on top of it, obscures it, right? So my question is about what is primordial wisdom? Because when I hear, the reason I'm asking is when I keep hearing that term, I keep thinking, do you have a wisdom that we already have and we're trying to get back to, but how do we get away from it if we already have it? So I'm just trying to understand what that actually means.
Primordial wisdom. So your question is how to?
Well, the question is actually, what does that actually mean? That's the question.
Like, for example, same like a Buddha nature. You know, like we all have a Buddha nature and what that really means. And it's pretty much can be same kind of idea. Some kind of innate usually in Uttara Tantra, it gives you a lot of kind of etymology, like analogies. Like it is is like a Buddha statue, which is a kind of eons time stuck into the under the earth. Something that's temporarily it is obscured by all this earth, but there is a potential to manifesting that. So so now that's again same this as we saying this morning we started. That's kind of the good news, primordial wisdom that we have. So the question comes, what is the so maybe I think the important part is, yes, this is nice, it's very kind, it's very kind, and we all have this kind of primordial wisdom, but what is the hypothesis? Like what's the kind of like a theory behind? Maybe first we should look at the theory. Like, what is the theory that you all have this primordial mind? Wisdom, or now what I feel, the word wisdom, once we kind of trying to apply for more subtle mind and more subtle mind and more subtle mind, the way we understand the function and the rule of wisdom not necessarily totally applies exactly. The behavior is not necessarily exact we can apply for the subtle mind. The wisdom, so we understood. Because again, the mind, like for example, like the water, on the surface it have a different ripples, a different manifestation, and more deeper, just kind of like one kind of like a entity, one kind of like a manifestation. But on the surface it comes all these different shapes and the ripples. So like, but these whole are not two different phenomena. They are one as a whole, water as a one entity. So now, when we say we have that primordial wisdom, I don't think so. Wisdom that how we understood in conventional, in the surface, that active and observing, that kind of behavior not necessarily exist into that primordial wisdom. Maybe when it comes down to the fundamental in the primordial, we can label different here and there, but as maybe it's all is one huge, pure, clear water, pure, clear consciousness. So that pure, clear, subtle consciousness is the source of all these different waves. So basically, it's saying there is something in the depth of our consciousness. There's a kind of pure state of existence, unpolluted, unmanifested in any kind of things. Maybe labeled as a wisdom, or I think we can label as also compassion, primordial wisdom. I think that kind of like a very conventional character of a wisdom may not necessarily apply to it, but we can say that, I think.
This is more of a reflection perhaps, but I was just thinking that appreciating the way that you were referring to the differentiating meditation to apply to different aspects of hindrances. And then I was thinking too that our egos, when they're not right sized, I don't know how to explain that, but that tends to lead to aggression and to aggressive action. So that when the ego is somehow wounded or something is going on in the course of conversations or in the course of dialogue with folks that we may be in conflict with, there is this it happens very quickly, very, very quickly. For myself, I can only speak for myself. the hours that I spend on the cushion, then there's this moment, and it's like, where did that go? Because it arose so quickly, and then I'm trying to cultivate this question of what am I protecting in that moment, because I can feel that there's a protection of whatever is false. It's like a false protection, correct? But it's like that kind of response that an animal has to protecting something. So I go to what am I protecting, and then I take that moment. I can't do it in the moment, and then reflect on it later and apply an antidote to reflect on it later on in the day. But it's just interesting how quickly these hindrances arise in the moment, and it's like we're protecting. What am I protecting? What is that ego that's not? I just call it not the right sized ego. It's small and invalid. All of this stuff comes up with that. So thinking about Nagarjuna's time, I'm not saying everybody had great egos or anything, but it's just interesting the complexity of our minds and in this particular culture as well. It's complex. So it's helpful to hear about and to remind myself to apply that in my meditations, that feeling to that arising. So perhaps the more healing, that when that arises, there won't be so much aggression to the protection of that attachment to that. Is that?
Yes, definitely. I mean, like, ultimately, wisdom meditation is a way to kind of maturing our human consciousness. How we bring the maturity. Even, like unmature behavior is caught into the silly reality. Kind of like believing into the silly reality. Mature consciousness is basically go beyond that. Like kind of, it can take the joke, it's not big deal. Mature, grown up, or so-called mature. So I think fundamentally, even sutras, is this lots of, basically, I'm not bothered by this. You sometimes we have this kind of extent, and it doesn't bother me. Maybe from somebody's perspective, how dare you cannot be bothered by this? It depends on individual's maturity and understanding and experience, and first time when I came to America, it was in 1989 I came to America first time, and in India, we have no television. In that time, not that much television exists that much in India. So in America, first time television, I watched 5-day retreat television. After 5 days, I got tired, but 5 days was like, I'm doing like 20 sessions. Although that time there's like 5 channels, but this is 1989. So like, I saw I think there's a boxing, and the crazy fighting. Then after, and then they hug, I was like, wow, that's amazing. 2 minutes ago, they're just throwing punch each other. Boom, they're finished. It's just game. There's nothing personal. They hug and they keep acknowledging. That was amazing to see that. It was like, oh, but but anyway, I think in the sutras also is mentioned, if we don't realize emptiness, then in the sutras it gives like you are still in the adolescence. That's the Chiba Suzuki adolescence. And once you realize emptiness, then you are kind of grown up. So that kind of, so fundamentally, in the meditation of emptiness is basically our consciousness get less distracted. I think this is the fundamentally what it's trying to come out is right now we cannot take all these detailed things, like it gets bothered, kind of becomes personal, it becomes this and that, so many things, it's so sensitive. So meditation with emptiness somehow, kind of grown up from this, not stuck into that, go beyond that. And then, it's not trying to avoid, it's not trying to ignore, it just doesn't bother us. It just kind of like matured, it just doesn't get distracted. It doesn't get bothered, it doesn't get distracted. That gives the space for the primordial, fundamental compassion or wisdom, all that. Right now is basically, we don't have enough space because so much is taken by all these things. So meditation about emptiness is the kind of like a way it struck the floodgate, somehow. Then it's create that space to naturally, uncontrived way to awakening loving kindness and compassion. It's not like a kind of. It is not necessarily, it's not like kind of like a constructing way of a developing compassion. It's kind of like it takes its own kind of time and growth and naturally progressing, rather than kind of like a pulling or push. So basically, meditation of emptiness is the most ultimate way of overcoming or healing. Yeah, so I have one student in the Mitripa. We discussed a lot how we can take Nagarjuna's or Prajnaparamita Sutra's suggestion, this shunya, or can apply into kind of therapeutic way of translating that into that approach. Maybe somebody who understands both worlds, if then taking that suggestion and putting into therapeutic format and way to healing. Because I think there is one in Richard Davidson in University of Wisconsin. They did some kind of, one of my students, he works into the lab, in his lab, and mostly they're doing the compassion research, and sometimes they do first impermanent, and then compassion, and then they check. They don't do impermanent, nothing, just go directly in compassion, and then they check. You put different thought behind that, prior to meditation compassion, something, impermanent. So they're basically trying to see, not only with the compassion, also they're trying to do with the concentration, so like it's not immediate concentration, but they're trying to put like maybe some kind of meditation into precious energy, but some kind of very uplifting, and then going through the concentration. Or maybe put compassion behind first, and then trying to build up the concentration. So like a different, kind of like a foundation, and trying to, and he said like they have something different result. But I don't know, I didn't get the detail, but yes. I don't know, whatever the image they're able to capture, imaging. So Mhm. And in the sutras is mentioned there's a tremendous merit about reflecting and reading and reciting Prajnaparamita Sutra. And I was reflecting a little bit. It's fundamentally what we are doing when you read, when you reflect, when you meditate, basically creating that space. And the merit is not other than that space in your conscious world, I think. And that's the infinite potential, infinite merit. Yes, absolutely. I don't think so. This is something that merit as a number, merit accounts is kind of like somehow you're the merit, that zero becomes endless. But the expression having that, and then I think in our own daily life, once we, just kind of like just reflecting, reciting, even the mind to get into that space for a little while. I think it's, maybe gives us some surprise. We not necessarily to count, opening our account every time, but the time tells maybe some kind of surprise. Oh, what's that? Something that basically, I won't say, some kind of like a comfortable with the self. I think fundamentally the grasping of the self and the ego strategy is constantly telling, make sure we are not comfortable with our own self. If we become comfortable with our self, then ego lose. It's constantly make sure the strategy we are not accepting our own self. Otherwise, ego lose his own profit. So of course we're using comfortable of self with a kind of strange terminology, but it is not necessarily egomanic behavior. Another extreme is the egomanic behavior, way too controlled by ego. One is totally kind of like give up, and pretty much surviving through fear, just kind of fear-based. And that's also one extreme. So I think in the Prajnaparamita Sutra is a merit, the infinite merit, is basically it's not necessarily ignoring the challenge, but not buying the challenge and going with the challenge, but still trying to create that space within our own conscious world. I think I feel what really means infinite merit. And then it's like whatever you, in the sutras, then this is like whatever you think, the wish will come true, whatever. I think then we need to look at it not just a faith base, but what is the logic base into such an expression. Is the sutra is exaggerating, or it is like today's marketing kind of things? No, you take this one, then you don't have to do anything. You don't have to exercise. You become perfectly healthy. You can eat whatever you want. Don't exercise. Just take this one. You become healthy. Or it's like a extreme kind of exaggeration, or what's the logic base? The logic base is basically opening the space and the potential of our conscious world. And I think that will be the logic base. That is the merit. That is the potential. I don't know, another merit Uh, and that kind of like a peace state of our mind there's I think it's not it, then it becomes fearless base of openness. Fearless base of openness. Then I think yes, it becomes very it's access it opened up it's open individual person's openness based on the fearless. And then of course it becomes we are social human being and we are there's a tremendous things to learn and tremendous things to grow. Yeah, then in another way to look at it, this in the West, like in East we don't have a terminology, but that's not being, I say, comfortable in my own skin. What do you call that? Mm-hmm. This is I'm not being comfortable in my own skin. Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is a very strange phenomenon that everybody go through. We don't in the East we don't have that expression, so kind of exists, kind of doesn't exist because we don't label it. Mm-hmm. So in the West we labeled, so such things do exist and it becomes a very big deal. So again, meditation of the emptiness of the self is, it sounds a little bit nihilistic, but at the initial level, maybe it's something as an individual person, there's some kind of like comfort. Openness for healthy sense of self. Of course, still challenge, ups and goes, but still resilient sense of self. We can fall down, can get up. So I think it's a fundamentally meditation of the emptiness, of the so-called emptiness of self, is somehow to relate it with how we feel in our own skin. And have to have some effect. So, I don't know now. What time is it?
It's 11:40.
Oh my God, I keep talking for that long.
We don't mind. Thank you.
What things else, children?
I have a question.
Okay.
You were talking about primordial mind. Are you using that as equivalent to nature of mind?
The word primordial is seen kind of like ultimate or fundamental. The word primordial is ultimate
and original essence, core.
Yeah.
So in such a case, primordial mind, much more, it's just basically that in the Buddhist understanding, the concept of mind pretty much put into the three categories, the grossest mind and subtle mind and the extreme subtle mind. So this kind of covers Sutra and Tantra and the book. So primordial mind may fall into the third category, extreme subtle mind, so-called clear light mind. Okay. So what is a clear light mind? what is the example? Usually, in a karmic world, we say like a time of death. You know, like all the elements dissolve, everything's dissolved. That makes our grossest mind dissolving, and somehow it opens for the subtle mind. So subtle mind is kind of like the borderline between this life and future life, you know, time of death. So they say like, so therefore like, you know, sometimes there's a great masters, they are right now in a clear light meditation, don't disturb. It's basically trying to pass into that karmic, so it's trying to take that karmic ride. They take, you know, it's karmically happening. Usually you do with the meditation and visualization. Now here is in happening things real time. So they take that ride and being conscious, and somehow then they kind of like a click and recognize and go through that clear light meditation. So that clear light mind is a primordial mind which exists. While we are breathing, it's there, but it is a barrier under all this gross of mind. But when we become clinical death, it becomes much more opportunity to manifesting, because the covers are blown up by karmically. So, so this is the primordial mind, the clear light mind, the citizen, and is also source of the nirvana and source of samsara. Okay, so so it is the same thing like in the matter world. We say, you know, part, and then we go through different atoms, and it goes some more subtle. In the same way, in the inner world, gross mind and extreme subtle mind. You know, so. So yes, the answer will be primordial mind is required to clear that mind, that extreme subtle mind.
Ultimate nature.
Yeah, I mean, that's yes. You won't say ultimate nature of mind. You won't say that that itself is the ultimate nature. Once the nature of mind, clear light mind is as that itself as ultimate nature. Ultimate nature is that itself is ultimate nature. Not ultimate nature of mind. Just basically, the minute we're trying to talk subtle mind, extreme subtle mind, somehow we need to kind of distinct any kind of duality thinking process, duality expressions. It needs to kind of naturally need to be so it's so much it is rather than off something.
Okay.
Okay, I think it's easy to say, but then time comes. At the time, then like all the things slowing down. I'm not sure. Okay, ready? Are you ready? Maybe when the chaplains they should tell people, "Are you ready now?" Ready? 1, 2, 3. Okay, jump to clear like one.
To have a countdown.
Countdown,
you know.
yes, countdown, yes, countdown. There's a one Geshe in Italy, and so he got sick, and he's translator. You know, he's translated this monk from Copan, straightforward personality, no kind of political mind. So Geshe was sick in hospital in one of the Italian hospitals, and he came to, maybe you know, Tutin Shera in Copan.
Mm. Yes.
So he came to Geshe Jambagyaso, he's telling Geshe Jambagyaso, and he came and he said, then he told Geshe, you better die. Why you staying in Italian hospital like this pain, and you study, you practice, you did everything, you better to die. Why you stay here like this? So when he said that, he just looked at the situation and just genuinely, it's nothing negative intention, but just kind of, but it kind of a little bit strange to tell me. So then Geshe-la became better, he healed and he came back. He told me it's better to die. He was like kind of so sure, like, you are prepared, and like, why you stay in Italian hospital? You better to die. Okay. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.